Your head to the sky. We're in the midst of sorrow. You can't see how I'm optimistic. I'm a runaway. Tomorrow will bring. Be optimistic. You hear the voice of reason telling you this good that I've begun. No matter how reality seems, just hold on to your
Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Life with Shenita. I am Shenita Connolly, and I would like to thank you all for joining us this evening. This is a wonderful, wonderful show this evening. We have some amazing women to share with you some wonderful information about banking, and one will share her testimony. So I'm so excited to have these women. Not only are they professional women, but they're mothers. And I'm so excited. And they're grandmothers like myself. So I'm excited to have them. We will have Miss Tawana Toms and Miss Glinda Ellen. So before we get started, I just want to cover a few things about the show. The show, Life with Shenita. The goal is to see people live a vibrant life after facing challenges. When my husband passed away in 2015, I was in a very dark space for months. And the next year, after surgery, God said to me, live, wake up and live. You still have life in you. And so even beyond that challenge, I have been able to move forward and live a vibrant life. This mini series, Is Your House in Order, was derived from my husband and I not having all of our affairs in order. We did not have all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed. And so God said I had to share my testimony in hopes that it will help others take the time to get their affairs in order. We were sharing a few moments ago about living our best life, and really, if we live our best life after we've got our affairs in order, we are truly living it and we're in a peaceful place. So I am hoping that by sharing my story and inviting professionals and people in to share their knowledge, their experience, that it will prompt you to take the necessary steps to get your affairs in order. My book, Is Your House in Order, is available on Amazon. I have copies and can autograph them if you'd like one. As I said, over the last few weeks, you actually can purchase it for $15 versus $20. And I am almost in my 5th year as a widow. And so the $5 discount, I am prompted to give that back to you all. So I would love for you to have a copy in your possession. Please reach out to me if that is your desire. Please tune in weekly at 7 p.m. on Thursdays. We will complete this mini-series in a couple of weeks, but we will have other amazing topics that will be discussed. Also, remember to make time for what matters. Your family will be grateful that you did. Tonight, we're talking about banking matters, making sure that our bank accounts and our banking affairs are in order before we need them to be. Also, I want to remind you guys, let's prepare for the inevitable, just the way we prepare for everyday life. In addition to that, let's embrace the fact that one day we must all depart this earth. There's no other way out. I would ask that questions be emailed to me each Wednesday prior to each weekly show on Thursday. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this broadcast. And I would like to bring our first guest, Ms. Tawana Toms, who has over 30 years of banking experience. And we are going to have a conversation about banking matters. So stay tuned. Good evening, Ms. Toms.
Hi, Shenita. How are
How
you?
are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. And I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
agreeing to share your knowledge, your experience with the audience as we encourage others to get their affairs in order. But before we get into that great conversation, tell us a little bit about Tawanda Toms and who she is.
Oh, wow. Let's see. Well, we can start with the banking part. I want to first though, let me say thank you for doing this segment. It is very important, even with more so now with what's going on in the
Mhm.
world. Financing is a difficult topic. It's very difficult, more so now because a lot of us don't have a lot of it, and we can see it just slowly dwindling away and
Mhm.
slowly coming in, if
Mhm.
any at all.
Mhm.
So we need to take this time, and I'm so appreciative that you even asked me to come on and have this conversation because we do need to have those conversations, the tough conversations. So
Mhm.
I hope it's something that I can say to your audience that will make them even reach out to me. I'm more than willing to help anybody look at their financing or
Mhm.
answer any questions that they have in regards to banking. So thank you so much for what you're doing
Yes,
to
you're welcome.
with the community, for the community, to help them get their affairs in order. But yeah, over 30 years in banking. I started
Wow.
at the bank when I was 18 years old. And
Wow.
it didn't start as a career for me. It was a job. It was a means to an end, right? It got me money to buy things. And it wasn't until, I mean, and I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've worked with just regular consumers and I've worked with large corporate clients. So I've seen what's necessary for both ends. So I've seen what's necessary for a regular consumer and I saw what was most important for large corporate clients.
Mhm.
So it taught me a lot and I
Mhm.
made a lot of mistakes in that learning period.
Mhm.
But when I knew better, I did better. So
Mhm.
hopefully later on in our segment, I'll be able to tell you what was that scar for me,
Mhm.
that pivotal point that turned the way I look at financing completely around.
Mhm.
And with that knowledge, that's how I know if you are brutally honest with me and you can share with me the tough questions, I'll show you how you can turn those things around as well. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that. But I'm a married 28 years this year.
Awesome.
It's to my high school sweetheart. So we've been together 30 something years, 35, 36. I hope he's not even listening. I have two daughters, 28 and 22. Oh, wow. And I have two grandbabies, and they are both under
Yay.
two. So I feel like I'm a new mother.
Right.
Grandbabies just feel like mine,
Right.
So I have,
Right.
and with saying all of that, I have a purpose to get my finances in order.
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
just me that
Mhm.
I'm living for, and then I know the inevitable is going to happen. So I'm living for them, but I want to be able to leave them something so that they can live a beautiful life like I've done all my life. So I do it. I do it for them.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I love
Absolutely.
it. So you know that grandparent piece, leaving a legacy or leaving an inheritance, is so important to me as well. I mean, they mean so much to us and we want them to have a start, a foundation to this world. And last week we kind of talked about, or over the last few weeks, we've talked about even writing it up in a trust or leaving a trust, leaving those funds for those grandkids written out specifically. You know, I may not want to leave $50,000 for Micah, who is my oldest grand, to have when he turns 18, because he may not be able to manage that. But I could strategically place it in a trust and say, when he turns 30, I want to give him $40,000 for his down payment on a home, or if he goes to college, this amount is set aside for that. So there are so many things as grandparents that we've learned, like you said, over the journey, that we want to do differently and better, so we can set these grandkids up, you know?
Absolutely.
So,
And you want to break the generational curse if you're not
absolutely.
used to that. Oftentimes people are not used to things being left behind and what to do and what that looks like. And my vision was my grandmother, when she passed away, her affairs were so in order. And I watched my grandmother as I was coming up, and I wanted to mimic her and my granddad. And when my granddad died, she had no worries in the world. And then when she died, her affairs were in order. I think she wrote her own will, and the lawyer just said, therefore I, and all these
Right,
little legal
right,
terms.
right.
And because she even said, if this person can't do it, then I want you to go to this person. She was just very methodical like that. And I want to be the exact same way.
Exactly.
Nobody fought over anything. We didn't go to no probate court. We didn't do anything. If she said, leave her a ring, you got a ring.
Right.
And that's exactly what, I know it took her time to get that done. But that's what we got to do. We got to be methodical about our stuff, regardless of what you have.
That's right. That's right. It's so important to take the time and plan for the inevitable. And I'm going to keep talking about it. I know that it's a tough conversation. It's a conversation that most people don't want to hear, but God gave me the directive, and I am going to be obedient. And I was resistant at first until he chastised me. And so with that being said, we're going to go into a few questions that we have. One being, as it relates to banking, because we think about banks. I think about, I don't, like you said earlier, I don't really want anybody to know my business. I don't want anybody to know that. But as we are thinking about getting our affairs in order as it relates to banking, what is a POD? Can you explain that to us?
Absolutely. POD, the legal term is payable on death. So what that means is, whatever your assets at the banking centers that you would go into a banking center and either ask for or sign up for, anything like that, checking account, savings account, you got stocks, you got CDs, things of that nature. You can designate a person or persons to receive those items should you die. So whatever is in your account, whatever your POD says that was left in charge, would be able to gain those assets. A lot of people either don't know about it, don't trust anybody, don't want to leave anything behind. But in the theory of getting our affairs in order, we do need to make sure that that's a check. If you don't want to do, let's judge a POD versus a joint account. If you have a joint account, you don't need a POD, because should I die, my husband gets whatever is in my account. His job at this point is to either take my name off the account or take the funds and put them in his account and close the account, because a dead person cannot deposit and they cannot write checks. So they can't have accounts. So you can't just say, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. No, take care of your business and move the monies, or just take the dead person's name off of the account. So a joint account, you do not need a POD, because the person that is left is in charge. It's their money. They can operate it while you're living any way they see fit, or you two see fit. So if you put monies in, they have just as much right to that money on a joint account as you do. Now, POD is different. POD is, you don't have access to my account. If I'm living, you don't know what I put in it. You don't know what I take out of it. You don't know what I'm leaving you unless I'm telling you. You don't know anything about it. So if I die, and you as my beneficiary, and you know that I left you as a POD, you gotta know, because I gotta get some information from you to fill out a form. So if I die, you take your information, your ID, in the death certificate, you go to the banking center and you say, hey, this person's died. It's instant. Those assets are now yours. You know, it gets ticky-tacky when you're talking about multiple beneficiaries, because then people start talking about, well, what if the beneficiary dies before the testator? Well, that's part of keeping up with your business, because if you are the owner of the account, you should know that your beneficiary died and you only had one. So now you got to go back into the banking center and you got to get another beneficiary. Okay. If you have two beneficiaries and one of them dies and you didn't make any changes, that other beneficiary gets whatever those assets are. So I would plead, I don't know what banking centers, I'm not promoting any banks. That's why I did not say where I work. Some people know because they know me, but I'm not here to promote any banks. So whatever reason that you've chosen, the banking center that you've chosen, go into their bank, their financial institution, and ask them about a POD. Ask the questions. Look at the documents, and then ask yourself, who can I add to my account today as a POD if they're not already on there as a joint?
That's awesome. And I know a lot of people don't really think about this, payable upon death, because they don't like to talk about death. I had a conversation with a group of men at a men's ministry in Decatur probably a couple of years ago, and I asked those men, and many of them were married. I asked them, and I'm sure it was a rhetorical question for them, how many of you guys have secret banking accounts? And they all were looking at me like, did she really ask me that? Yes. How many of you guys have secret bank accounts? Because you're married and you have a secret bank account, and so something happens to you. Nobody really knows about that secret banking account but you in a lot of instances. And say you have $10,000 in that secret bank account, no POD, no will, no power of attorney. What happens to those funds?
Let me tell you, that could be ticky-tacky too. If, just say for instance, nobody knows, like you said, it's a secret. So you went up there, you made the account, only person knows what's going on in that account is you. There's a period in your account according to your document agreement, your deposit agreement. If your account goes untouched for a certain amount of period, say a year, no activity, nothing in, nothing out, your account will then go to a dormant status. That means you can activate it by making a transaction or calling the banking center, going into the banking center. You can reactivate that account from a dormant status. So after it's dormant, there's another period. If there's inactivity, no deposits in, nothing out, it goes to a purged status. Purged is closed. However, it's still going to stay on our system because there's a possibility that after 2 years, if so, you can come in and say, hey, I got $10,000 in this account. I was overseas for 2 years and I forgot to make changes. And then you can show ID, this, and that. And they can open another account for you or something. And let me tell you something, $10,000, the bank is still making money off of your deposits. Understand that. So when you're being secretive, the bank is making money in those 2 years off of your deposits. After whatever period that is on a purged status, the bank has made enough, and because of Georgia laws, you have to turn it over to the state. So that $10,000 that we've already made interest on, we got to now, through the escheatment process, we have to turn it over to the state. And the state has willy-nilly to do whatever it is that they want to do. And so you see all these pop-ups that say unclaimed properties. You'll see them in the newspaper, you'll see them online, and then you go in and you type in your stuff. But because you know why you don't have unclaimed property? properties because some of us are on top of stuff that we have, accounts that we have. We know if we have an account open. But if I go and search your name and I see that Shenita has some unclaimed properties, I can't do anything with it. I can't go to the bank and say, oh my gosh, Shenita died. Can I get her monies? So the people that's normally checking those things, they're never going to find anything unless they're looking for somebody else. And then if you're looking for somebody else and you get something back in terms of, yes, they do, oftentimes there's nothing you can do with it anyway.
Right.
Because you don't have the POD, you don't have the will, or you're not the executor on the account. So that's still state properties. But they've done their due diligence because they put it out on some kind of website, and we've gone through the process of dormant status to purge status to a sheetment process, and now we have posted it and nobody claims it. It's the state.
Wow. And that could have been prevented by making some decisions early on as we talk about banking matters, handling our affairs, dotting our I's and crossing our T's. You know, I understand the need to do this more than you know, I will admit wanting to by default, you know, of losing my husband. Fortunately for us, all of our banking affairs were joint, but we did not have that living will and a power of attorney when he had his heart attack. So there were some challenges. And so I truly hope that people will take the conversations that we're having very seriously so that they can sit down, as you mentioned, and I've said numerous times, have the conversation, have the tough conversation, and take the necessary steps to get your affairs in order so that your family members can have a smooth transition, regardless to whether you're ill or you pass away. And as you said, specifically during this COVID-19 pandemic that we're in, we're losing a lot of people. And I'm sure, you know, that family members have dealt with some very challenging scenarios because of not taking the time to do this. So I appreciate you having this conversation with me. And I know we kind of talked about the financial piece of it, and I wanted you to share just a little bit about that as it relates to your journey.
Let me tell you. Now, I said I've been married 28 years, right? So I started very young. And in my young years, and not knowing anything about anything, I bought a lot of stuff. I hid a lot of stuff.
You say
so
hid?
What was the... Yes,
a lot of people have stuff. Amazon.
Exactly. But what was the scar for me? That wound that I will never ever want to repeat is the fact that I had a need to please. As I look back on what happened to me, I'm most appreciative of it happening, because had it not happened, I never know where I could be. I probably would have been divorced by now and broke and whatever the case may be. But I had a person that was very close to me that needed money. And very first thing I thought about was my husband got a credit card, and he had one of those little checks, those little cash advance checks. And I was like, oh my, they only needed it for a month. And might I add, it was $5,000. And I was like, oh, please, I can go and deposit this in our account, and I can give this person the $5,000. They will give it back in a month. He wouldn't know anything. Crazy. I had that need to please. It was my friend, and I love my friend, and they came to me, and I wanted to help out. Well, long and short, it was months that passed, and my husband called me at work. I never forget. I was looking out the window at work, and he says, why is Citibank credit card bill $5,000, blah, 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 blah. And I said, what? He says, I called the bank to get his affairs in order, and there's a balance. And I said, well, we'll have to talk about it when I get home. He said, definitely. So when I told him the story, livid, he was livid. He said, I said, I'll get the money back. I'll get the money back. He says, please do. And while you're at it, let me see all of your credit card bills and the balances. I said, what? He said, every credit card you have, I want you to write them down and what the outstanding bill is. And I want it by the end of the week. That was the hardest conversation because now I've got to face what I've been doing. I've been burying my head too. I'm just buying and pay the minimum balance. When I wrote that down, Shenita, every card and every amount that I owe, not the credit limit, I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I was hurt. And I met him because we both work downtown. I met him on the street with a manila folder. And I gave him the folder. And I said, don't look at it until you get to work. That's how embarrassed I was. And that's how I didn't want to see the disappointment in his face. And I got to work. That was the longest day. When I got home, he was like, this is ridiculous. He said, we have got to change this now. First, I want my money back. And second, we need to start from the top to the bottom and get this in order. So when that happened, I can open up a credit card bill or I can open up my online banking and not have a problem with him seeing anything that's on there, because that was the turning point for me, is that you cannot go out here and just do willy-nilly with this credit just because you have it. And what I told you when we talked the other day, if you look at someone's bank statement, typically most people need therapy, not not a financial advisor. They need to deal with their issues because that's why we buy. I had a need to please, and I wanted to, look good, and I wanted people to tell me, "Oh, that's pretty, that's this, and that's that." But other people buy for various reasons. You know what I'm saying? And therefore, they need to tackle that. They need to tackle what their emotional issues are. And I guarantee you this financial thing will come together. And that was my experience. I had an emotional attachment to wanting to be liked. And so I did whatever. And then now it got to a point where, girl, you can have no credit card bill and not care if anybody like you. And I'm just fine.
Right. And that's a great point, because you might need to figure out what drives us to the behavior that causes issues. And we a lot of times won't do the self-evaluation to see what is that about. And you said it was a need to please other people. And so many of us probably struggle with so many different challenges. And so I am grateful that you shared that right there, because you and I kind of talked about the payday loans. And I was a payday loan queen before I moved to Georgia in 1996. I found myself in a spiraling out of control situation before I moved to Atlanta. Just awful. And it was because I was trying to keep up with the Joneses, and I wanted my kids to look a certain way, and I wanted to look a certain way, and all of that, which got me in a mess. So you're right. Sometimes we have to take a real self-evaluation and see what's driving this behavior.
Right.
Why are we in this situation? Why do we have these bank fees, and why do we have a negative balance here? What's prompting this spending? So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is a part of this whole process of handling our banking matters, whether we are getting our affairs in order, making sure that we have a POD on file, making sure that we have a will. As a matter of fact, I was going to ask, and we kind of talked about this, why is it important to designate someone? We kind of talked about that, and and I want to go back into it again. Why is it important to designate someone to handle our affairs before we're ill or we pass away? Kind of talk about that again, because there's probably someone who has just joined us, and we want to make sure they understand the importance of this right here.
Absolutely. Well, in keeping intact with keeping your affairs in order, or if you're just starting to put your affairs in order, you want you're accountable for everything that you have. If it's a home, if it's a car, if it's finances, if it's a CD, you worked hard for it.
Mhm.
And you want to be able to leave somebody something, should you not be able to enjoy that. And that's what we're preparing for. We're preparing for life after we're gone. And if you have loved ones, family members, friends that can benefit from those things, should you die, no one is telling us to just give away your stuff and you're still using it. Well, I'm still using my account. So I'm not telling you to give your account to somebody.
Mhm.
I'm saying, should you pass away, who is it that you
Or
would
when you
want to
pass
be?
away. When?
Yeah, well, when, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. When you pass away, who is it that you want to benefit from the fruit of your
Mhm.
labor? You know,
Mhm.
we
That's
work
it.
hard, but not just for me. I
That's
mean,
right.
when you have nieces and nephews and grandkids, you
Mhm.
want them to have a good jump start. And
Absolutely.
if you're thinking about them, oh well, they'll just squander the money, or they'll just do that. Just like you said, you know your kids, you set it up that is specific to that child. If you know it's one that's just going to blow through something, then maybe push it out from 21 to 30.
Mhm.
You have the right. It's your money. You can do this often. You can do it to whoever you want to do it to. Nobody is giving you directions on doing that. Just do something. And I have three things that I actually live by that I want to share them. One is you got to trust. You got to
Mhm.
trust somebody. And
Mhm.
that goes to you talking about the secret account. That goes to, oh, well, I don't want nobody to have my money, things like that.
Mhm.
You've got to trust someone to leave something.
Mhm.
So you got to
Mhm.
tell somebody where the secret things are. You got to tell somebody that I've left you in charge of something.
Mhm.
And then number two, you got to read and educate yourself.
Mhm.
Those little statements, those accordion like things that you get when you open an account, or this big, thick book that you get when you open a checking account or a credit card, you got to educate yourself, because what that book is telling you is that me as a financial institution, I own more of your account than you do
Right.
legally.
Right.
So if you don't educate yourself, they will take your money, honey.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
want it. That's the business that they're
Mhm.
in, right?
Mhm.
And number three is revisit one and two often.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
thing I did when my kids were young, for number one, I trusted a friend. And I did until my kids got of age. So if anything happened to me and my husband, this friend would have total control of my children and the finances and the homes and the cars and everything.
Mhm.
I prayed that my kids would get old enough to where I could have that conversation with them and not have to leave somebody else in charge of them. And
Mhm.
I'm blessed. Both of them are still with me, and I have my granddaughters, my grandkids. So I've told both daughters, here's where this is. This is what you do if I should pass, if daddy should pass, this, that, and the third. So sometimes you have to change who you trusted
Mhm.
along the way.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you may not have the same person as your beneficiary, and that's fine. That's
Mhm.
okay. But still visit it. You have to visit it all the time and continue to. And number two is to continue to educate and read to make sure that you are not leaving anything on the table. Have those tough conversations. I told you that, should you bounce a check and it's your first time within a year, did you not know that if you call, if you take your head out of the sand and call your financial institution, they will forgive you of that $35 overdraft fee?
Mhm.
We don't have it because we're scared to ask, because
Mhm.
it shows that we don't know what we're doing. So we
That's
need
good.
to ask those tough
Mhm.
questions.
Mhm. That's good. And it's so important. Um, as we talked about earlier, the POD and having that designee, uh, you to make sure that someone gets your money versus the state, as we said. We don't want to give our money away to the state. We want to make sure that in that process of trusting someone, in that process of educating ourselves, that we have listed someone to be the designee, whether I'm in the hospital on my back, can't talk, in a coma, they have access to my funds. If we're co-owners of the account, or if I have a power of attorney while I'm still living, they can handle my affairs. Or if I pass away, I have that POD, or I have a will that states that all my assets be given to whomever that is. So we want to make sure, as we're having those tough conversations, as you mentioned, that someone is designated. It doesn't matter who, but you need to trust whoever that is, whether they're co-owners or POD. Trust someone, become educated, as you mentioned. Go to your banking institution, talk to an advisor at the banking institution to determine what's best for you and make the decision to do what's necessary. So I want to thank you for that conversation and those tips and advice and the wisdom. And as
Absolutely.
we continue on, we have Ms. Glinda Allen in the back, and she's going to come in and kind of share a little bit of her testimony of the importance of having your banking matters in order. So we're going to bring her in right now.
Hey.
Hello, Ms. Allen.
Hey,
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invite.
Yes.
This has been a delight.
Wonderful. So tell us about Glinda Ellen.
All right. So I am a wife, a mother of 3 adult kids. I have 3 grandkids, 2 granddaughters, and 1 grandson. And also, I am the only survivor left in my family. So I have buried my mother and both of my siblings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you understand the challenge of losing loved ones. Absolutely. And the challenges that come with not having your affairs in order.
Absolutely.
Wow. So, yes. So will you share with us what that was like for you, and whether it was your mother who passed or your brother who passed? What was that like? Did you all have your banking matters in order?
So with my mother, from the 3 that I buried, my mother was the only one that had everything in order. She absolutely had her house in order. I was actually a joint on her account. So when she passed, I had access to all of her bank information and everything. So that transition, even though it was hard to go through the process, it made the financial piece of it much easier because I didn't have to go and try to figure things out. Everything was laid out. So it made it so much easier when you have someone, and like Ms. Tawanda was saying, you find someone that you can trust. Because my mother was married, but it wasn't, not that she didn't trust her husband, but she didn't trust him to handle business. And so you really, really need to make sure that you have someone on your account or that POD that you trust to really handle your business. And so I was that person for my mother. Now with my brothers, no, their house was not in order. And it was a struggle. Thankfully, when my mom and my baby brother passed a day apart. So my mother had enough life insurance to cover both buried, but it wasn't nothing left. Nothing left. And so it's just so important. And with my older brother, he had absolutely nothing.
Wow.
Absolutely nothing. And so even when it came, because he was at the time drawing Social Security, so I was not able to get anything. So at that point, we had to actually take up money to help bury him. But with my mom, I'm telling you, I just want to encourage everyone to make sure. I even talk to my own kids, my husband, my family, to make sure that if you have a bank account, make sure that you have someone on that account that you trust, that will handle business, because we are definitely in uncertain times. Nobody knows.
Absolutely.
So it's so important to make sure you have someone on that account that you trust to handle the business, not just someone on that account to just go through the money, but someone to handle business. If you have children, make sure you have someone on that account that will make sure that your child is taken care of, or your grandchild, or whoever that person is that is responsible enough to handle that. So that was my experience. It was a tough experience, but what made it so much easier in regards to my mother is that she had her house in order. She had everything laid out.
That's a blessing. And I want to just ask you, prior to mom passing away and you being a joint owner of the account, did you have to handle any business prior to her passing or just after her passing?
I had to, when my mother took sick, I had to make sure all her bills was paid. Meaning I had to go and use, go in her account and everything. She was still in her right mind, but not able to go and pay her bills. So I had to make sure all of that. And after she passed, there was still another whole booger that I had to tackle because my mother had this asbestos situation going on. And so, but thank be to God that she had made me the estate owner. Executive, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that made it much easier too. So whenever you have anything, whether someone have an estate or whatever it may be, make sure that all of that is taken care of prior to, because I'm telling you, if it wasn't, especially with her estate, that would have been a hot mess, because then it was her husband that was still living, plus me, plus my brother, that we've been back and forth in court, and that would just been money that just sit there, and stuff when things came about. But yeah, so I still had to handle business prior to, before she passed, and then also after she passed.
That's good. That's good. I appreciate mom taking the time, and we hear that often with the baby boomers and the generation prior to baby boomers. That was important to them. And I think Tawanda said to us, her grandmother was an amazing example to her as well of having her affairs in order. And I was blessed to come from a family with mom and dad who did as well. And, we've gotten away from that somehow over the years. I've heard people say things like, I'm not leaving anybody anything, or I'm not letting anybody look at this. And they don't really understand the consequences of not taking the time to properly handle your affairs so that your family members can move along easily when the time comes, because we know it's coming.
Yes.
We just don't know when. So I appreciate you sharing that piece. And Tawanda, as we're navigating through the rest of this conversation, we have about 15 more minutes. I would like for you to share something else that kind of stands out to you in the banking industry that you see that people need to really pay attention to, or take heed, or start doing, or stop doing. Is there anything that you would say to the audience?
Oh, absolutely. And let me piggyback off Glinda too. Having your affairs in order pretty much keeps everything out of probate court. Everybody knows probate court is going to delay everything. You got to get monies for lawyers and things of that nature. And if you want your loved ones to move on in peace and take care of your affairs quickly, do something. Leave it in charge for someone, a beneficiary, somebody that you trust to do that. So I just want to let you know the caveat, or the opposite of what we're telling you guys to do, is probate court. And then you got your sisters fighting against sisters. And like you said, it could have been terrible for the husband and you to have a conversation. And you miss the piece of burying my mom because you're fighting a family member, or burying your loved one because you're fighting a family member, or you're having to go to court just to move forward. So I wanted to just bring up the probate part just to prove how important it is to get these things in order so that your loved ones don't have to deal with that. So you asked a question about what else in banking. I want us to review our bank statements. I want us to look at what is it that we're spending our money on. I know we tapped on it before, but I'm so passionate because I do believe, Shenita, that there's a connection with your mental state and what you use your monies for, and how you just let it fly and don't say anything. Are you okay with the $35? Just because you didn't balance your book right, you're not gonna go and fight these people for my $35 back. I'm so alarmed by that, that we just, oh well, it's just $35. No, that's a lot of money. So we need to be looking at how we deal our business. How do we use our debit card? Why are we writing checks? So look at your bank statement. Write down your credit card bills. I'm not talking about the limit that you have. I'm talking about what you owe the bank. And if you want to get even more embarrassed, do a list of how much interest they're charging you. That is ridiculous. If you have a store, Macy's, all of those places card, 25.9, 29.9, that is ridiculous. So I want us to unbury our head, get out a piece of paper, write who you owe. This was a lesson that was given to me. And I promise you, it was the best lesson of my life. I can do it with you if you want me to. But I want you to write down your creditors. I want you to write down how much you owe them. And I want you to write down the percentage that you're owing them as well. Because if you're paying just the minimum balance, oh my God, you're not doing anything. You're going to have that bill forever, amen.
Forever.
So part of good health in terms of financing is to get that in order too. We can leave the wills, we can do the PODs, we can put everybody in charge, but don't leave me all this debt that you got, and then I'm supposed to figure this mess out. If we got time, if you can hear my voice, you got time. If you wake up in the morning, God grants us that ability to open our eyes tomorrow. That banking center is open tomorrow. Go to your banking center, be in line, put your mask on, ask them to give you a POD. So tonight, your assignment is, who is it that you trust?
Right.
Who is it that you want to, if you don't want to do a joint account with, who is it that you will be okay if they handle your financial information when I die?
Right.
So that's your assignment. Do that, and then write down what you owe and pair that to what you're bringing in. And then let's talk about that bottom line. Does that seem like more? You're not bringing in enough to get whatever? Then we need to think about that. And I know we're talking about 30% interest. 30% unemployment rate. I get that. But let's work with what we have, because this thing it's gonna get better. I don't know when, but it's gonna get better. So let's start now. So when it does get better, you have a foundation to work on or to work from. You have a foundation. So I don't care if you got $10 in your account or 10 million. I told Shenita before we started, that's workable. Put somebody in charge of those $10.
Right.
Because eventually that $10 could be 10 million. You never know.
It could be. It could be. And
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you mentioned the relationship, the mental aspect of it, because that's, the relationship with money. Like what is your relationship with money? And we don't really think about that. Do we have a healthy relationship with money, or we just don't respect it? Do we respect it? So I think about, the few millionaires, personal millionaires, that self-made millionaires that I know personally. And I think about the relationship that they had to have with money, the respect that they had to have with money. And so you're right. We have to figure out, where are we mentally? What is this about, mishandling or disrespecting money? Like you say, throwing away a fee. Because I was a fee queen. I told you I was a payday loan queen, a fee queen. I'm telling you. And I had to have a conversation with self about that behavior, because I was spiraling out of control. So I'm just saying, I'm sure that we're speaking to someone that is there, right there.
I hope so. And
I'm hoping that they will reevaluate their relationship with money, and that they will start to respect it.
Yeah.
Value that, decide on who they trust to designate as a POD or as a co-owner to an account, that they will take it very seriously, start paying off those debt that you talked about, writing it down, the balances, establishing some good relationships and thinking about long term. I'm 55 now. So in 10 years, 12 years, I'm 67, 65, 67. I don't want to, continue to have thoughts of regret about my relationship with money because I didn't make good decisions at a particular time in my life. So I think it's important for us to really talk about banking matters, financial matters, money, have the tough conversations. Glinda, I thank you for sharing your testimony on your mom having her affairs in order and how that made things so much easier as you guys navigated through that time of her passing and your brother passing. And then on the flip side of, your other brother who didn't have things in order and what that was like for you guys. So you know it on both ends of the spectrum. Yeah. So, and I thank you for you and your husband, as you mentioned to us earlier, having this conversation and getting things in order on a personal level. Yeah. As a result of the book. So thank you for your transparency, both of you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being willing to help Tawanda. Hopefully someone will reach out to you and ask for your help as they continue to navigate and get their affairs in order as well.
And let me say this quickly too, Shenita. I had a family member that I helped. It's very quick. What I told her in the beginning, and I don't do this for a charge. This is something that's I've been passionate about, and that I will do. I have no problems with doing that. And what I told my family member is, don't waste my time there. Don't waste my time. If you're not ready for the hard questions, if you're not ready for me to see and uncover some of the stuff that we've been carrying, then don't waste my time. It's not a monetary thing because I wouldn't charge it. But I have grandkids, as I mentioned. I have a husband. I have kids that I'm spending time with. But I'm willing to take out a chunk of their time to help you get it in order, get your stuff in order. So by all means, reach out to me through Facebook, a phone number. I don't mind if Shenita shares that. But the only caveat is, do not waste my time, because I'm going to be serious about what the questions I ask and what I see.
And you want them to be serious about the answer. So if you're not serious,
absolutely
don't bother. And I respect that. And so as we continue to close out, again, I want to thank you both of you ladies. Happy Mother's Day to you both. Happy your mother. Happy day, Mother's Day to every mother out there. So we just, thank you guys. And we hope that by sharing this banking matters conversation, that people will take it serious. Go to your banking institutions, handle your business, contact Miss Tawana Toms. She's willing to help you in whatever way that you need help with. So ladies, as we close out this evening, thank you again. And I will talk with you guys in the near future.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Shenita.
You're welcome. Thank you. Smooches.
Smooches.
So thank you all for tuning in tonight. We look forward to you guys tuning in again next Thursday. Thank you all so much for having the tough conversations off the book. It's one thing to watch the conversations, but it's another thing to have the conversations with your family members and your loved ones. That's the key here. There's no pay for this. God instructed me to do this. And so I am hoping that by having these conversations, that it will prompt you to do what's necessary for your family. That's the key. We thank you for watching. We thank you for liking the post. We thank you for sharing the post. We want to this week give away a free cake for Mother's Day for this show. So for those who liked and shared the post, we will do the drawing on Friday. And you will have a choice of either a pound cake or a key lime cake. And so we hope that everyone that is a mother that you are celebrated this weekend, not only this weekend, but every day that you're cherished. If you're fortunate enough to still have a mother, I don't have my mother still, but if you're fortunate enough to still have your mother, celebrate her. If there are issues between you and your mother, work through that. We only have one life to live, and we don't want to have any regrets about that. So next week, please tune in at 7 p.m. on next Thursday. We will be talking with Anthony Watkins from Watkins Funeral Home, Jonesboro. We know that this is a tough conversation, as I've said before, but it is a necessary conversation that must be had. There's some necessary things that you have to do to get your affairs in order, and we don't want you to take it lightly that it's just going to be okay. Sometimes it's not. And as a widow, I'm speaking from experience. I believe if my husband could come back, he would apologize for us not taking the time to sit at the table, have the tough conversations, and get our affairs totally in order. So I am hoping that I will encourage you to not waste any time to get your affairs in order as you're navigating through this life. My book, Is Your House in Order, is available on Amazon, as I've said before. You can also purchase it through me, an autographed copy, for $15 versus $20 if you purchase it on Amazon. I hope that this conversation is what you needed to make the next step. I hope that, as Ms. Tom said, the conversation necessary about money, the mental state, that you'll even have that conversation and figure out what is that relationship that you have with money. And if it needs to be evaluated and changed, that we'll make the necessary steps to do that. As I mentioned before, I was horrible with my finances and made a lot of mistakes, and have just come to terms with making different moves, different money moves. So I want you guys to be in the same situation with your money. So thank you again for watching. The goals for this show is to help you overcome life challenges and live a vibrant life, because we're all going to have challenges, but how we come through those challenges is really the test. So we're going to be faced with different challenges throughout life. My first challenge was the divorce from my first husband. The second challenge for me was the loss of my mother. The third challenge for me, major challenge for me, was my son being incarcerated. The fourth challenge, of course, my dad before my son. And then the fifth, my husband, losing him suddenly and unexpectedly. So we're all going to deal with different challenges as we journey through this life. We have to make a decision. Will I continue to live and thrive? Will I continue to make good decisions? And so I've decided to continue to live a vibrant life beyond those challenges. So I encourage you to do the same. Join me next week for the conversation about funeral pre-planning, the 411, as it relates to planning for our transition from this earth, as we all know that we will leave here one day. So again, thank you all, and you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. And please do something special for your mother while you have her here. Celebrate her. Celebrate your mother. You guys have a great evening. Take care.